So Linda Newstrom Lloyd is going to be talking to us about making Manuka sustainable. She is she's worked on flower biology for years now, and she's conducting research on bee health and nutrition since 2009. She works for Trees for Bees New Zealand program, carrying out research to discover multi-purpose bee plants with plentiful protein-rich pollens. Linda is co-chair of the Oceania Pollinator Initiative and contributes to allied projects to conserve and protect bees. I would like to welcome her to the stage, and please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. While people are trickling in, I might just advertise. I don't know how many people have seen this, but if you go to our Trees for Bees stand, which is in the industry good area, here's our new publication this year, a little booklet on how to plant, and it's based on all our experience to date. And so hopefully you'll get a little bit out of it if you want to go out and plant for bees. It's quite an easy thing to do, and you might have a lot of fun with it. So these are free, and you can just go get one at our stand. So I will start, and I'm going to be talking about making Manuka sustainable. And you can look at that on many levels. Do you mean sustainable on a farm? Or do you mean sustainable in a beekeeper's operation? Or do you mean sustainable in the country? Or do you mean sustainable for the whole country, including pollination services? And so I actually have rewritten this talk about 5 times, working on all those different levels, and I finally got to a place where I think we can really achieve something. Because what I want to show you is, even though there's a tremendous level of overcrowding, I really think that we could reach good sustainability fairly rapidly if we have the right conditions. The first thing I would like to do is to remember all the controls. The first thing I want to do is to thank all our sponsors. And I just thanked Honey Trust today, this morning. And I want to thank especially our platinum sponsors, because they really help us. I'm reporting on 2 projects right now. Our second SFF project, Trees for Bees, which is a big project, and a pilot study project from Natty Bees that we got from a Sustainable Farming Fund as well. The 2 the platinum sponsors for the Natty Bees project is Natty Perot and Eastland Community Trust, and I want to thank them. And our platinum sponsors for the current 3-year grant that's just ending this June, hence our booklet for summarizing what we've done, is Ingleby, a very big, large-scale Manuka operation and beekeeping operation, as well as a sheep and beef farm, etc. Kintel Honey, where we have a demonstration farm. New Zealand Manuka, where we will be having demonstration farms. Midland Apiaries, Airborne Honey, Hawke's Bay, and Foundation for Arable Research. So this last project of the last 3 years, they were our platinum sponsors, and I want to thank them very much. And I also want to say that this is, even though I'm giving this talk, this is really a team effort, but I wouldn't be able to there's about 18 people that are collaborating with us, and so I can't put all their names on, but everything I say is my responsibility. I'm going to talk about carrying capacity and overstocking in general, because that's really what the issue is for Manuka. I mean, that is really what the issue is. Everybody knows that. And I'm going to talk about our Natty Bees Manuka pilot project, how we are addressing those issues. And then I'm going to talk about, in general, solutions in a broader spectrum for sustainable Manuka. The background context here is I started in working for the beekeepers in Canterbury in 2006 or 7, and then in 2009 we started Trees for Bees. And what I have observed over the last 10 years is there's this every year, there's another threat to bees. The parasites, now it's Varroa resistance, is an issue, the pests, the wasps, and now giant willow aphid. So it's like, how many new things can we have that are going to hurt the bees and hurt the bee food? Pathogens, we didn't used to have nosema. It's only the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, and this is a real serious disease that correlates. It is when the bees are starving, it's very easy for them to succumb to the nosema. Pesticides, there's a whole bunch of controversial issues about pesticides. And poor nutrition, when we started, poor nutrition, we thought, well, the floral resources are really compromised here because the dairy industry was expanding back then, and the intensification of agriculture in general was a problem, and the elimination of weedy plants, our gorse, willows, and broom, and other really good plants. I think heather, Kaluna heather is also a weed. So the elimination programs, that affects the beekeepers, and it affects the bees, and the giant willow infestations, which are recent. But let's take the big picture. I never imagined that it would look like this. This is, I got 70 years of data from Murray Reid, thank you very much, Murray, from Assure Quality. And since 1946, the year I was born, hate to admit it, but hives have doubled since 2005, but they started out at about, 20,000, if I'm reading it right, and now we're at 680,000 hives. New Zealand, for hive numbers, New Zealand has never had this many hives, ever. We have had, the apiaries went up and then they dropped during the Varroa incidents in the 2000, and now the apiary sites are going up. I don't feel too alarmed by that. And the total number of beekeepers, that's not alarming. If you look at the slide for the total beekeepers, there's peaks and valleys. It goes up and down according to how valuable beekeeping really is. And it's going back up. So 7,000 beekeepers is not a worry. But the hives, can New Zealand cope with 680,000 hives? And the experience of a lot of beekeepers is that there is overcrowding. So we will look at that, but let's try and look for solutions. First, I'll talk about the unprecedented new pressures. Now I knew this was happening in Canterbury when I was down there because there's a very intensive seed industry there, and they really need good beekeeping going on. And there was kind of competition for wintering sites down there. And now it's all over the North Island, especially in Bay of Plenty and Hawke's Bay, and apiary takeovers where somebody with a lot of money can come and go to the farmer and kick off someone who's been there for 40 years, a traditional beekeeper who actually happens to be supplying pollination services. That's happening. And overstocking new hives near the traditional wintering sites is a really big issue right now. We know that overstocking leads to malnutrition, diseases, and colony loss. And we know that pollination services are going to be threatened if the bees are siphoned off. You know, if the floral resources, the wintering sites, are siphoning off into the manuka industry. So that's not very sustainable. Now, I don't know how many new beekeepers there are in the audience, and I apologize to all the older beekeepers because they know this already. But for a new beekeeper, sometimes I don't know if they understand that if you had a bunch of cows, and it's 6 cows per hectare is your stocking rate, and somebody comes on and puts 6 cows on a half hectare, you know what's going to happen. It's kind of stupid, and you look inside the fence and say, well, that's dumb. Why did you do that? And the one who has maybe half a hectare only puts on 2 cows. He's a little bit understocked there, but he has poor pasture, so that works. With bees, the carrying capacity for bees, you can have the same scenario. You put 6 too many bees on your half hectare on wait, I got to learn this system here. Do you see a little thing there? Or I have to press it? Is it working? Yeah, okay. Okay, so you put your 6 bees on here. I mean, this is very simplified, but I'm trying to make a point. So what a lot of people don't understand is that if you're the one with the good patch of forage, all those bees in those areas of poor forage are going to come onto your land. And if that happens to be your manuka, you're not going to be very happy. So, or if somebody has something much more attractive on someone, say that big green square in the center was your manuka plantation that you put in and paid a lot of money for, and then the next thing you know, the clover flowers or the towery or something that's more attractive to the bees, all your bees are going to go over there and you're not going to get a manuka harvest. So that's something beekeepers understand and know, but a lot of the newcomers to the industry don't know that quite yet because the bees do not have fences. And the overstocking, the bees use up the honey and the nectar in order to live. It's their energy source. And so when you overstock, you get a lower honey harvest. Everybody knows that. The bees become malnourished. That means, especially for Nosema, if they're starving bees, they are going to be more susceptible to diseases like Nosema. If the bees are starving, the colony could dwindle and even go to a collapse. Dead out hives means that you're losing your profit right now. Hives are $700 a hive to buy a new one, compared to, it used to be $180 about 2 or 3 years ago. So, and everyone in the foraging range loses. The solutions to this are strategic bee planting. It's one solution. It's not the whole solution, but I'm not going to address things that are outside the scope of my work. We're planting bees, and we think that we can increase the carrying capacity. So more Manuka plantations on marginal land, more wintering sites to support the Manuka, and more wintering sites to support pollination services. Our project with Natty Bees, here's our team. Willie Ka and Rangi Raroa are the directors of the Natty Bees team. And Tara Maya, and Rapataka are our main assistants when we go up there to do our work. And this is a one-year project, pilot project, funded by Sustainable Farming Fund, Natty Perot, and Eastland Community Trust. What they wanted was residential apiary sites. And they're going to put more Manuka hives on there, and they want residential apiary sites, spring and autumn forage to cover that so that it could be residential, and local employment to train beekeepers. And the GNS Science Palynology team is the other part of the team. And we also had a wonderful French intern student from Rennes, and that was Sebastian Mira. So that's our team. We also had Angus McPherson. He's in the center there, and he's talking to the team about where and how we're going to plant. So we want locally sourced native plants. That's the best for marginal land. And we do not want any toxic plants. Do not plant caraca. Do not plant tutu. And kofi, I don't know. Beekeepers have different stories from different people. I don't know if you should be planting it. For the bee diet, what we're trying to aim to is to have the bees have 100% fresh, natural pollen. That is the best bee diet. We know that it's the elite, very best diet that a bee can have, and we can plant it for them. So what we wanted to know was, what are the bees in this area collecting in terms of pollen, and what are the gaps? What part of the year do we need to plant for? So we collected pollen from the honey to know what's coming in on the honey. That will give us an idea of what the nectar sources are. And we collected plant vouchers and pollen vouchers. And we collected pollen pellets from the hives. We sorted the pollen pellets, and that thanks to Sebastian Mira for doing most of that work. It's long hours. It's not easy. We're still developing our methods because the colors change and the lighting, and we're trying to develop a standard method that we could teach other people how to know what your bees are bringing in. And they're all those pollen, well, it's complicated. I'll just leave it at that. When we give representatives of each color to Shun Li and Ian Rain, then we get a pie chart of what came in to the honey and what came in as pollen pellets in our hive trap. So we see that we got trifolium and cabbage tree and clematis, and I've never been able to collect clematis in the native forest. It's always too high up, and dandelion. That's on December the 11th, that's what the bees were collecting. And in the honey, we found that's at the peak of the Manuka honey, and we know that it's Manuka or Kanika, and it's probably Manuka because that's what was flowering and the Kanika wasn't in that area, and a little bit of buttercup and clover and lotus. So how does that pollen get into the honey? Well, we didn't, there's some people say that it's underrepresented or not there, or it doesn't matter that it's there or not. And so we I looked up some literature, and well, how does it get in the honey, and what happens in the hive to pollen? It either falls into the nectar in the flower and the bees suck it up. That's how you get pollen into honey, into the nectar. The bees can be grooming near an open cell in the hive. That's another second way. The wind can blow the pollen in, but that's not going to happen with Manuka because it's not a wind-pollinated plant. Or the pollen, one thing a lot of people talk about is the pollen coming into the honey during extraction because it's getting mixed up with pollen that was in the brood nest. So we did some field observations on pollen in Manuka, and we've photographed here and found many times that you can see when you look at when you look at a very close up of the Manuka flower, you see in the center there all that central cushion. Oh, I have this little thing here. Okay, all that central cushion. You see these yellow blobs, and there's even, lots and lots and lots of pollen has fallen in. So pollen has been dislodged into the nectary. That nectary is a cushion nectary. It has tiny little drops of nectar that come out mainly at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and then it evaporates over the day. I haven't done detail work. I know that Comvita and Massey University have done detail work on the nectar. I haven't yet done that. So the pollen, the most instructive way to show you what I think about pollen in honey what you do is you look at the morphology of the flower, and you look at how the bee fits in it and what the bee does in it. This is a native bee. A native bee has a huge pollen pellet on its hind leg, but it's not like a honeybee pollen pellet, which is packed with nectar. It is a loose, dry pellet that is packed with multiple hairs there. And that means that they just sort of bump into something and a bunch of pollen's going to fall off, whereas on a honeybee, it'll be packed in with the nectar. And we have observed the native bees wandering around in the flowers, and that's how pollen will get in. In contrast, if you look at the rewa rewa there, see those where the bee, do you see it? Whoops. Is that the right thing to do? Sorry, I can't see if that's doing anything. Oh, that's the cursor. Right, all right. So you see the bee there, and you see the pollen is out here. That's where the pollen is, and the nectar's down here. So there's less opportunity for pollen of rewa rewa, which is what is called an underrepresented pollen in the honey. There's less opportunity for it to be there. And this is the nectar. This is when they're collecting nectar. Whereas the honeybee, when the honeybee's collecting nectar, it's big hairy thing, and it keeps bumping all the anthers, and so pollen is going to fall in. So one of the things that happens that I think is an issue with rewa rewa versus Manuka is that the bee's honey stomach, which you can see, I've got the arrows pointing. There's a honey stomach that's empty. There's a honey stomach that's full, and that goes into the regular stomach. And so there's another picture up there, okay? There's a little honey stopper valve. And what that does is the bee filters its honey. It filters the pollen grains and any debris and insect parts or anything else that they don't want in their honey. They filter it out, push it into the regular stomach, and then they suck it back in. And when they suck it back in, it has to go through a valve. And what happens, you can see that valve right there, okay? So what happens is rewa rewa is a very big pollen grain, 40 to 47 microns. And Manuka is a very, very small pollen grain. The small pollen grains come back in to the honey stomach, and the bigger grains stay out. And so in general, maybe some will come through, but in general, you would not expect Manuka to be filtered out more than rewa rewa. So that means there's going to be pollen in the nectar. And if you analyze it, we have searched and searched, but we can't say for sure, because you can't prove a negative. We have not yet seen honeybees collecting pollen from Manuka, but we have of rewa rewa. We have seen honeybees collecting nectar from both Manuka and rewa rewa. The pollen size in Manuka is small, rewa rewa is big. Pollen found in honey is yes, in both. We find the pollen Manuka in the honey, and found in the trap pellets, we haven't found it yet. It might be that there's pellets, but they're too small. I really don't know. But we need to do a little bit more work. But anyway, our work is the same as what happened in 1948 when Harris and Filmer published their work, very similar work. So we know that Manuka will get in there, but we didn't know if it was Manuka or Kanika, so we decided to pursue that and see if we could tell the difference between Manuka and Kanika. So we went to Peter DeLange, not me, Shun Li. Shun Li did all this work, sorry, it's not me. And she went to Peter DeLange and said, okay, we need to have properly identified Kunzia species and properly identified Leptospermum types. The taxonomy and the description of the Leptospermum, the Manuka, has not yet been done, but Peter DeLange knows what the types are and what will probably become species. And so we had 10 types of Canica, 10 species of Manica and 5 to 10 types of Manica, plus some hybrids, 115 samples in total. There's our distribution. We have a geographic distribution. Shun's poster, which you can see in the hallway, has all the details of, you have to get your eye in here. The Manica on the top row has a more concave side to it, whereas the Kunzia has a more straight side. And there's an SEM. Manica has a more rugged surface, and Canica has a more smooth surface. So you can see the difference. A palynologist like Shun can certainly see it. So more of these results, go see her poster. So now back to our natty bees, and I'm just going to skip over a bit because I see I'm a little bit less on time. These are all the natives. You can go to our website and download this native plant list with its flowering times. You can get the spring and the autumn. And what we're trying to do is have the March, I've got 4 minutes left? 5? Yeah, we're trying to do the March feed budget. And we want the spring feed and the autumn feed, and we want no competition. So we planned to plant this list of species, which is in your plant book. This is where you'll see what flowers when and what we planted. Our plants were donated by Lana Hope. And we then did another kind of a flowering chart, which is also in this book, where we're counting trees rather than just counting species. So we went out and planted near the apiary, 395 plants. We had Angus to help us, and he was the one who decided what went where and which ones. And we also have other, I want to say this was a very successful project. We'll see, it's going to grow, and the bees are going to have a lot more food, and we're just starting. 395 is not very many. We've planted 21,000 plants on 18 demonstration farms so far. So in the interest of wintering sites everywhere else, this is a picture of in Gisborne with Paul Badger and John McLean. They're doing research on that site. We've got sites at Ingleby, huge number of sites up there. Barry Foster's been really a benefactor to us. He's helped us more than anybody in helping us get these demonstration farms out there and get connected up with people who want to plant. Kintail Honey came on board, and they've got already the flowering ash and avenues, beautiful avenues on their farm. And so just back to the Manuka part, I just want to say in closing that you really have to look at the scale of what you're doing. We know that bees fly from 5 to 12 kilometers max, and maybe average of 3 or 5, but they can go 5 kilometers if they need to. And the surrounding flowers inside, you need to know what's around you when you're investing in Manuka, including other hives crowding you out. So our 3 solutions, which is more Manuka plantations on marginal land, more wintering sites with Manuka, and more wintering sites everywhere, is the good news that, the good news is that you can do it. But have we really, I want to say this one last thing, have we really answered the question at the big level? I mean, we can do farm by farm and, help people do that. But what about, can New Zealand hold 700 hives without overcrowding, so that everybody's happy, nobody's taken over anybody's apiary site, and nobody's crowding anybody out or violating the beekeeper's golden rule of poaching on boundaries? I don't know, but what we need there is a carrying capacity model, and Anne Gale is the next speaker. Anne Gale Ossel, we're working with her. She's in the sky with the maps, doing the big level vegetation analysis and everything, and we're sort of down on the ground with the plants and the flowers. And so what we do is we kind of estimate the relative amount, but that's not the end goal. We need the absolute amount of pollen per hectare, and we're working on it. And Anne Gale is going to give a talk that's talking about how we're going to do it at the bigger level that is way beyond me. But I just want to say we've made one little step of progress in that we have analyzed flax. It has 5 milligrams of pollen, and you need 25 to 30 flowers on a flax plant to grow 1 bee from egg to adult, as far as we got. So thank you very much. I got 1 minute left. Oh, 2? Thank you very much. Sorry, I was a little bit speedy.
if anybody has any questions, please. Oh, yeah, off you go.
Yeah, is your mic on?
It's on.
Uh-huh.
Can you please explain, great talk by the way,
Thank you.
can you please explain what is going on in the bee's stomach why is it filtering the pollen out? Is it before it wants to put nectar into a cell, it wants to pull the pollen out for...
You mean why it's filtering the pollen back and forth?
Yeah, why is it actually doing it?
John McLean, is there any information on this or anybody? I mean, I'm not a bee biologist, I'm a floral biologist. So I was very surprised when I was doing my reading to find out there's this honey stopper. What is that? And why are they doing it? But I guess it's just, I mean, they need to store honey and they need to clean it, and that's how they were made, to clean it. So I can't really understand your question. If it's a why question, I don't know the answer.
Oh yeah, no worries, I was wondering why they did it.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody here, anyone know?
Linda, Simon PC, Wairua, Apries, Northland. I've never yet heard anybody talk about the native pollinators and the effect of our honeybees on them. I know you've made some comments to me, and I wonder whether you could just give some insights to us beekeepers about what I see as being something we don't even ever think about. Whether in fact native pollinators are being displaced when we bring large numbers of bees into an area, and whether there's huge pollinator decline anyway, and all those issues, please.
Oh, okay. Do I have a minute? Okay. Yeah, I have done work on native bees, and I've done them in the wild before Varroa hit the South Island. And we have a little bit of data before and after, but I don't have the after, but I have the before data. Basically, it's interesting because John Berry and some beekeepers say the native bees hold their own. I've seen them hold their own if they've got clover around to be distracted to or for other reasons. I need to investigate that, whether the native bees outcompete the honeybees. But when you think of a competition, it's one thing to have 5 hives, or let's say 10 hives of 60,000 bees in your area where you used to have none. And it's another thing to have 200, 500, 1. People talk now in thousands of hives. They don't talk in terms of 40, 50, 100 hives on an apiary site. I mean, I don't know if anybody has 1,000 in their apiary site, but by region, they're bringing in tens of thousands in some regions. So, I mean, this is all just what I'm hearing, and I don't have data on any of it. But I do know that before Varroa, the honeybees and the native bees had a balance, and they were fine because they didn't interfere with each other as far as we know. That comes from Barry Donovan, the native bee specialist in this country. Now all the bees in the native area are wiped out because they don't have a human intervention for the Varroa, and they die. They're ephemeral hives, they just die. So now what's happening is they are putting overcrowding onto the native bees. I'm suspecting it's extremely highly likely that we're overstocking honeybees on land where the native bees are going to be compromised. Okay, for 1 year, maybe they can survive a little bit and get a bottleneck population to grow through, but year after year after year after year, that's another story. We need to get research done on that, and we have a monitoring method to be able to do it, but I don't have data right now. I just have a little bit of data from the past. But yeah, the native bees are threatened, I think, if you're putting in thousands of hives into a region where the natural level of feral bees would have been maybe, I don't know, whatever per hectare, 10, 20 per hectare, and now I don't know. But yeah, it's a good question. Thanks.